Nigeria leadership is something that really needs to change. We are being faced by quite a plethora of challenges, and I believe Nigeria has not done enough to the young people in terms of education, in terms of opportunities, and in terms of even trying to see the realities of young people are being uplifted, especially when you look at what is happening in other continents. I believe it's very important I get the qualification to become a lawyer in Nigeria and to see what I can do with the law, to confront daily challenges around freedom, freedom of expression, freedom of association, and a lot of people whose rights have been violated in one way or the other.
There is a young man from Gombe State who has sat in rooms at the United Nations, influenced policies across multiple continents, written a book that Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka took notice of, and is still finishing his law degree all at the same time. This person is none other than Adamu Usman Garko. You're very welcome to Together We Notch podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, before we start, we are going to play a little game.
All right. I hope I can play it.
Okay, you're going to tell us 3 statements about yourself. 2 truth and 1 lie. And
Wow.
and we are going to figure out which one is the lie.
Wow. 2 statements.
Yes. 2 statements should be truth and 1 should be a lie.
I am a civic space defender.
Okay.
I am also a writer.
Okay.
And then about the lie, I don't know which one I should mention, but then I haven't finished my law studies.
Okay. I know you've written a book.
Yes.
So the lie should be you have not finished your law degree.
Yes.
That's very
I think that should be
obvious.
the lie.
Yes, that's very obvious. Okay.
Yes.
Take us back from the very beginning. Who is Adamu before all the titles and work?
So Adamu Usman Garko is a very humble young person.
Yeah.
I started writing in my junior secondary school days. That was when I found passion in reading. Basically, before I began my journey into writing, I was a voracious reader. So I was always reading books, fiction, non-fiction, historical books, and what have you. Then eventually I found passion and interest in the art of writing in my JSS2, if I could remember correctly.
That's very young.
So I was writing poetry then, and then later I ventured into story, writing. Then from there to articles, and I have published a lot of articles on reputable Nigerian newspapers, even from my junior secondary school days.
Okay.
And when I eventually got into high school, I launched a book titled When Day Breaks, which at that time was recommended for university students. When I was in SS2. I was also lucky to be invited by Nigeria's only Nobel laureate, Professor Wole Soyinka, to Abeokuta, all the way from Gombe. And I was also lucky to win the Nigeria Prize for Teen Authors. I was the pioneer
really
winner
great.
Of the prize. So I've won a lot of prizes, a lot of awards.
From a very young age.
So in my SS3, I was awarded in Mina the Star Prize, which is an award for a team that has shown brilliance beyond the 4 walls of the classroom. So I've been doing a lot right from my secondary school days, and when I was done with my high school studies, I think a few days after I've written WAEC and NECO, I decided to create a platform titled Joel Writing Mentorship. So I think the journey, my interest in the development sector started way from
Right from a very young age.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Okay.
basically, that was
Okay.
the beginning.
That's really great and interesting to hear. So, growing up in northeastern Nigeria,
Yes.
what shaped your sense of responsibility towards your community?
So basically, every day I wake up to see challenges in my communities. We are being confronted by leadership crisis. We have a lot of young people out there who are in need of mentorship. We also have a society that is lacking in a lot from education, economy, health, and what have you. So basically, that fueled my passion to begin to see what I can do for the community. And from that very young age, I started a platform, that was mentoring young people in Gombe State. We were able to mentor nothing less than, I think, about 500 young people in Gombe State, and a lot of them eventually, published books. Some of them went on to take up leadership positions, but it even went far beyond Gombe State, because I was even in Bauchi State with the support of CTAT, where I mentored nothing less than 100 youths in Bauchi State. So eventually, when I got into university, I decided to formalize the structure into Open Knowledge Development Initiative, which I founded in 2023. So, and we have been doing a lot. So actually, what fueled my passion and interest is the prevailing realities around us. We're being confronted by climate change, uh, a lot of challenges in the educational sector, economy, and what have you. And I feel like if I'm in the northeastern part of the country and I can do something to the region, then I have to venture into all that I'm doing today.
Okay. You have supported about 50 civil societies organizations.
Yes.
What does civic space actually look like on the ground in Nigeria right now?
So basically, civic space in Nigeria is very weak. In fact, in 2024, I was able to win the Lifeline grant, and I brought that funding to Nigeria, where I mobilized 50 civil society organizations from Nigeria, and we were able to respond to restrictive legislations. So at that time, there were a lot of legislations before the National Assembly that sought to restrict the work of civic societies in Nigeria. And then with that support, we were able to mobilize nothing less than 50 civil societies in Nigeria, and eventually the bill had to be withdrawn. So we have done quite a lot, and it is because the civic space, even now the civic space in Nigeria is very weak. We are being faced by increasing, restrictions, legislations, and a lot of regulations that actually limits the extent of impact that civic societies can do in Nigeria.
Okay. A lot of young people want to lead.
Yes.
But they don't know where to start from. What does real youth leadership look like beyond social media?
So I always say everyone is a leader, especially youths. And leadership begins with understanding the challenges within your immediate environment.
Yes.
Sometimes we're being motivated by global challenges. We have a lot of challenges globally, at national and even subnational level. But then leadership begins from your community. You can look around your area or your school. You will find a plethora of challenges, problems
A lot of them.
that are abound there. So, leadership is about, especially for the youths, away from social media, leadership is about understanding their immediate challenges and then trying to see what they can do.
They have to start from the grassroots.
Exactly. And that was my beginning, actually. Presently I serve in a lot of global communities, and I have made a lot of impact beyond Gombe, beyond Nigeria, and beyond Africa. But then basically my journey started with identifying a gap in my immediate community, and then trying to see what I can do in that community. I remember last year I was invited by the United Nations International Organization for Migration all the way to Nairobi, where I pitched a solution around climate mobility in northeastern Nigeria. So we realized there is a gap of early warning system in the northeastern part of Nigeria. And as a result, a lot of communities are being trapped in flood, desertification, and what have you. and I pitched a climate mobility, project before the United Nations International Organization for Migration on their invitation. I was the only, representative from Nigeria, and I was able to, pitch a solution that will eventually solve, the problems of more than 5,000 communities in the northeastern part of Nigeria. So basically, it starts from the beginning, and then you can see what you can do to expand.
Okay. You operate from Gombe State,
Yes.
but you influence policy at continental level. How do you bridge the gap between local and international?
So basically, we are in the digital era, and technology today, we are being shaped by technology. Ideas are there, and then the world, which was a little bit far away from us, with the help of technology and digital innovation, is now closer than us than ever. So basically, I made use of technology a lot, and I have connected with several communities digitally, and then that has helped me to bridge that gap that will have existed ordinarily. For someone who is in the when I get myself into a lot of rooms and I tell them I'm from the northeastern part of the country, and when I even mention Gombe, they say, does even Gombe exist on the map? So basically, it's about leveraging digital, technology,
Presence,
and that
yes.
is what our youths, should do, away from the social media noise, away from,
They should leverage the technology
exactly.
that they have at hand.
So I think a lot of opportunities that I have gotten is from leveraging social media for good. And I think it's something that can go a long way for a lot of other young people.
Okay. Let's talk about the Open Knowledge Development Initiative.
Yes.
What gap are you trying to fill when you founded it?
So basically, at that time, I realized, because the platform transitioned from Jewel writing mentorship platform.
Okay.
When I finished my high school, I started a mentorship platform on writing, because at that time I was deeply,
Into writing.
But then eventually, when the organization was created, I realized the civic space and on the overall, the human rights space in Nigeria is facing a lot of challenges. And by creating the organization, I realized the organization can try to see what we can do to strengthen civic space in Nigeria, and to also support human rights in Nigeria. And lucky enough, within 1 year of operation, we were able to back a lot of partnership with international organizations. I remember only 5 months after the registration of the organization, I won for the organization the Lifeline grant, and then we were able to mobilize 50 civil societies in Nigeria. We were also able to win Plan International's Youth Support Fund. We were the only organization in the whole of northeastern Nigeria, and we did a lot of works around gender-based violence in Gombe State. We targeted more than 10 schools. So we have been doing a lot, and hopefully in June we are also launching a new partnership with an international partner that would see 15 organizations in the northeastern part of the country being empowered, to respond to digital threats. We are in a digital era, and a lot of organizations are being confronted with phishing, hacking, harassment, and what have you. So basically, the organization was created to see that we respond to civic space protection and human rights defense in Nigeria. But eventually, we are expanding to other places.
Okay. You have implemented digital literacy programs across 9 continents, 9 communities, in northeastern Nigeria.
Yes.
What have you learned about what these communities actually need from technology?
So basically, when I joined Wikimedia Foundation, I was an editor. I was creating articles on Wikipedia pages, and what I realized in the northeastern part of the country is that a lot of information are missing from the digital interface. Now, when you want to know about Gombe State, there's very
nothing
few
on the internet.
Exactly. And that contributes a lot to misrepresentation that is going on in the country about Gombe State, about northeastern Nigeria.
About the note in a whole.
Exactly. So I joined Wikimedia Foundation, and through the works that we were able to do with colleagues, we were able to identify more than 9 communities. And personally, as a 3-time individual grantee, I was able to lead more than 3, digital literacy programs in the northeastern part of the country. And we were able to empower not less than 5,000 youths in the northeastern part of the country. And today, a lot of these youths are out there leading digital literacy programs in Taraba, in Adamawa, in Borno, and other states of the federation. So basically, technology, as we have mentioned earlier, is something that we cannot run away from. But then the northeastern part of the country, especially states like Gombe State, are missing in this journey, in this rapidly evolving
Developing,
digital
yes.
world. So basically, that gap hinted us to do a lot in digital, innovation and to see what technology can do for our problems.
Okay. As a 3-time Wikimedia grantee,
Yes.
what does open knowledge mean to you, and why does it matter to Africa?
So basically, there are a lot of information that are missing first. I've mentioned that. And then some of this information are not accessible online. Even the very few information that are on the digital interface, a lot of them are not free.
Yes.
And the whole essence of open knowledge is trying to
Make
ensure
it free. Trying to make it
knowledge.
accessible to
So it's
everyone.
about free knowledge,
Yes.
for everyone. It's trying to bridge the gap that exists in the accessibility of information about everything, and that is basically what open knowledge stands for within the context that we operate.
Okay. You are Nigerian's delegate to the UN IOM program on
Yes.
climate mobility in Africa.
Yes,
Most young people have never heard of climate mobility.
exactly.
Break it down for us.
So basically, I know a lot of young people understands what climate is all about. So mobility is the aspect of climate, whereby a lot of young people, elderly people, women, the youths, and other categories of people who are being pushed to migrate because of climate.
Yes.
So now where there is a flooding in a community and it forced people to leave that community, it is climate mobility.
Okay.
And it is also about people sometimes migrating illegally because of the climate-induced challenges. And that is basically what is happening in the northeastern part of the country, especially the Bay states, Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe. So climate mobility is a section of climate that forces people out of their settlements, and that is basically something that we are being confronted in the region.
Okay. How does climate change connect to the work you do on government and digital
Yes.
inclusion?
So as I mentioned, I leverage digital innovation a lot, and within the context of climate, especially climate mobility, we try to see digital tools and digital innovation on the overall and how they can actually respond to the needs of climate challenges that communities face. For example, I mentioned earlier, I was in Nairobi last year where I pitched an early warning system, project that seeks to create a digital tool that is localized and that is meant to serve the local people and their needs. So basically what we try to do every day, looking at climate, is to see what available technologies can we localize, and then how do they respond to the local needs. For example, even outside of climate, we created the Digital Defenders Lab. And basically what we are doing on that lab is to create, digital tools that support organizations, especially marginalized, organizations, to see how they can leverage technology, digital innovation to respond to, challenges.
Okay. let's talk about your writing and storytelling.
Yes.
You wrote When Day Breaks
Yes.
and won the Nigerian Prize for the Teen Authors.
Yes.
How did a young person from Gombe end up as published and nationally recognized author?
So basically, as I mentioned, I started writing at a very young age, and that was fueled by my interest in reading. So way before I even published the book, from my junior secondary school days, I was a regular guest contributor on a lot of reputable newspapers in Nigeria. I was being published by Daily Trust, The Punch, The Cable, and what have you. So eventually, after a lot of experiences that I have garnered from engaging with literary platforms and especially established writers in Nigeria and Africa as a whole, I decided to publish the book When Day Breaks, and the book was published in 2018 in my SS1. And then eventually when I was in SS2, it was unveiled to the public. And at that time, I was lucky enough to have the book listed by Daily Trust among the 15 best published books in Nigeria. And the book was also a university recommended text by Professor Salah Abdu in Gombe State University. And I went on to win the Nigeria Prize for the Nigeria Prize for Teen Authors. So basically, from a very young age, I have engaged myself in a lot, and I believe in the power of hard work. And that is basically what I do even now that I lead the Open Knowledge Development Initiative. When I tell people the organization is not up to 3 years, they get surprised looking at what the
It's
organization
actually surprising,
is
looking
doing.
at what it has achieved so far.
We have done a lot
Yes.
of projects, beyond Gombe State. We have presence in Adamawa, and even last month we have unveiled our presence in Kaduna, and we have carried out a lot of internationally, donor-funded projects. So I believe in hard work from the early beginning, and I think even in writing, that is what encouraged and fueled my passion and interest in everything that I have come to achieve.
Professor Wole Soyinka hosted you, and you spoke at his international
Yes.
cultural exchange event. What was the experience like?
So the journey started in 2018 when I was invited to his hometown in Abeokuta, Ogun State, and I was able to connect with Nigeria's only Nobel laureate. And in fact, a lot of some portions of my poems were written inside his house, during that experience. I wrote, I think, about 10 poems, being inspired by nature. He lives in a forest.
Yes, around nature and all.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I was inspired by his place, and I remember even there is even one poem in the collection titled "The Ijebu Forest." That is the name of the forest where he lives. So basically, I was there to represent Gombe State in the Wole Soyinka International Cultural Exchange Program as a participant in 2018. So when I came back to Gombe State, because of what I was able to do as a young person, in 2022, I was graciously invited by them as a keynote speaker. So when I went there in the first place, I was just a participant.
You were just a participant.
And then when I got the invitation the second time, I was a keynote speaker among, I think, about 3 international, speakers, and I spoke around, I think, the intersection of rights and arts. So basically, the experience has fueled my interest in my journey as a young writer and in my journey in the development space. And it has motivated me to do a lot, to strive to see I make an impact wherever I find myself, because I got the invitation the second time because they were looking for someone who has participated in the program and has done quite a lot locally and internationally, and I was invited to come back and speak as a keynote speaker. So basically, it has been an experience that I will not forget in my life.
That's really great. You delivered a TEDx talk titled Beyond the Classroom. What is the core message you wanted young people to take from that?
So I delivered a TEDx talk at the maiden edition of the TEDx Gombe State University, and I was invited as the only student speaker. And the essence is to speak to the students and the participants of the program about unboxing their minds beyond the four walls of a classroom. And I delivered the TEDx talk using personal, stories, what I've been able to do right from my junior secondary school years
What you
to the
experiences,
and to the university days. So basically, I discussed about what young people need to do in the light of evolving opportunities. We are being taught often that we have to wait till we finish school before we begin to make an impact. And sometimes we are being told, we have to get grades or we have
Good
to get some
grades, yes.
qualifications, before we begin to do something
before
outside.
you can even achieve anything.
Exactly. So basically, I try to speak to the young people there about, unboxing their minds out of that trapped box. Because basically, a lot of young people have been trapped to believe, school is a barrier for achieving a lot in their lives. They believe school is something that they need to, finish before they begin to
Before you can do anything in your life.
in their communities. But then what I also try to speak there, when you are being told to wait till you graduate to begin to make an impact in your communities, and you should ask yourself whether those challenges that your community is being confronted with,
are they going to wait for you?
they're waiting
Yes.
for you. As I mentioned earlier, on actually every year, a lot of communities are being trapped in flooding in the northeastern part of the country. A lot of families have died because of flooding and climate change in general. And so you can imagine now I have to finish school before I could begin to think of a solution to that problem.
Yes.
Which I refuse to believe in that perception. So basically that is the core message of my TEDx talk, to try to tell young people that they don't need to wait before they graduate. They don't need to wait before they finish school or before they get any qualifications. And sometimes we are being told, we have to grow older before we begin to do something to the society, or before we begin to take on leadership positions. But basically, the world has changed from the way it used to be, and we have to wake up to the realities of today's world. Education is of vital importance. We need more students. We need more young people back to schools, but then that should not be a barrier, between the stories that they aim to pursue and then the opportunities and challenges that they want to confront. And that was the core message I passed during my TEDx talk.
Okay, you're finishing your law degree. How does law fit into everything else you are doing, directly or indirectly?
Exactly. So basically, I'm being inspired by the idea of justice. I have been confronted with a lot of challenges in our communities, and justice, is something that we are still trying to fit in the northeastern part of the country, and especially Gombe State. So basically, law is very important, and as someone who is a human rights and civic space defender, I believe it's very important I get the qualification to become a lawyer in Nigeria, and to see what I can do with the law, to confront daily challenges around freedom, freedom of expression, freedom of association, and a lot of people whose rights have been violated in one way or the other. So basically, law is essential,
And
and
all
I
of
cannot
that you
wait.
do, yes.
I cannot wait to become a lawyer. And within maybe 24 hours after being called to the bar, I have an intention to do a lot, and I believe it's something that would contribute immensely to the community.
Okay, if you could change one thing about how Nigerians treat its young change makers, what will it be?
So basically, I try to run away from always speaking about the challenges of Nigeria. I used to criticize Nigeria heavily before, but I realized, Nigeria is being confronted with challenges that are somehow insurmountable, sometimes. And as young people, we are not inspired by the leadership of the country. And that is basically where our anger is. When we criticize the leadership of Nigeria as young people, we are just being angered by the realities of our lives. We are still struggling, in a country that has a lot of resources. We are being faced by quite a plethora of, challenges. And I believe Nigeria has not done a lot enough to the young people in terms of education, in terms of, opportunities, and in terms of even trying to see the realities of young people are being uplifted, especially when you look at what is happening in other continents. So Nigeria leadership is something that really needs to change. The system has a lot of challenges, a lot of problems, and I believe young people have to play a vital role in that change. And that is basically what I usually tell young people. Yes, Nigeria, especially the leadership, is not treating you well, but you cannot wait for Nigeria to change before you begin to change your lives.
You have to make
So
the
you have
change.
to begin to do what you can do. We are in a digital world. We have mentioned that earlier.
Exactly.
And there are a lot of opportunities out there. So the first thing is for young people to upskill their skills. We have a deficit of skills among young people. They need to, improve on their leadership. They need to do a lot to position themselves for impact and for opportunities, locally and globally. And they won't have to worry about Nigeria and the crisis of the country.
As a final year law student and a digital space defender, if you are to draft digital right bills, for Nigeria today, what is one clause that is currently missing from our laws?
So basically, Nigeria at present does not have a digital rights bill.
Wow.
It is presently before the National Assembly for consideration. It has been drafted for long, but then Nigeria, and then the process for getting laws before the National Assembly and up to the states for assenting. So basically, if there is any clause that I will pay attention to, if I will draft the digital rights bill for Nigeria, I will pay specific attention to the aspects of localization. Basically, we have a lot of laws in Nigeria, but then most of those laws are not in tandem with local context.
Communities, yes.
So a lot of laws are copied from England and other countries, and they are not fully in alignment with the realities of
In
local
Nigeria,
communities.
yes.
So if I will get the opportunity to draft a bill in that light, I will pay attention to local people, local communities, their realities, their cultures. Culture, as we know, is a way of life, and you cannot remove culture from people or from a community. And a lot of laws today are not in alignment with the culture
cultures.
of our people. So basically, I will pay attention to creating a clause that mandates at every points of the implementation of the law, then that local context will be taken into effect.
Okay. What is one thing global organizations consistently get wrong about the needs of northern Nigeria?
So basically, as it has been the case, there are a lot of misrepresentation of our realities, and that is basically where a lot of organizations, even internationally, gets it wrong. There has been a lot of controversies in the security, sector when you look at northern Nigeria or northeastern Nigeria, even to come down. You will realize there are a lot of, information that are being projected as facts, which
About
are
Northern
a
Nigeria, yes.
misrepresentation of the region. So basically, and that is basically, we need to get organizations internationally to understand our context, to understand the real facts about the region. And that is because when you check internet, the literatures available on the digital interface are not something to write home about the northern Nigeria. So a lot of gaps are there, and a lot of information needs to be written about the region, from our challenges, the statistics, and what have you.
And I think that should be done by someone from the north,
Exactly.
someone from the corner,
So that
someone
is
that
why
knows
that is
everything
why I
about the north.
always pay attention to the aspects of giving local people the ownership of their stories.
Yes.
You know, a lot of times projects are being created, you know, away from the realities of locals. And that is where I actually pay attention to whenever we want to create a project. We try to consult the target people before we even send a proposal to any person or any organization. And that is because we want to ensure that ownership is there, and the story or the facts that we're presenting about those communities are their
verified,
realities.
yes.
So basically, people from the region, people from northern Nigeria, people from northeastern Nigeria needs to speak up. They needs to write a lot about the region, and they shouldn't wait for an outsider
to come and
to come and do so.
Okay. People often view being from the northeast as a disadvantage. In what ways has being from Gombe State actually been your secret weapon in international spaces?
So basically, as I mentioned, I try to shun away from looking at where I come from. Gombe, I have been in many rooms, even in Nigeria. When I mention I'm from the north, are you really from the north? You know, they get surprised when I mentioned I'm from the northern Nigeria, or even Gombe State, where a lot of people, you know, consider like out of the map.
Yes.
So basically, I try to position myself and the skills that I always bring wherever I find myself. So basically, yes, you know, there are a lot of opportunities being from Gombe or being from northern Nigeria, because the idea is that the region or the states has a lot of, you know, a lot of opportunities that are yet to be untapped. So basically, when you come from the region, you know, you will be motivated, and even the people that are engaging you will be motivated by the fact that they have a lot of gaps in those communities that they need someone to actually fill in. So basically, it can be an advantage, but then I don't usually try to look into that perspective.
Okay. What is the notch you would like to give a young person, especially in the northeastern Nigeria, who feels like the world is not built for them?
So basically, my encouragement to every young person out there is to strive to do great things. We have examples of many young people who have emerged from northern Nigeria, even from Gombe State.
Yes.
I have a friend, Usman Garko, who started during, you know, COVID-19 era by creating a local respiratory, you know, system. And today he leads a multi-millionaire company in Dubai. So we have a lot of stories of people from northern Nigeria who, despite the challenges, are making great strides locally, nationally, and even internationally. So what I want to encourage young people out there is to not allow the challenges that they are being confronted with to drown them. They should not allow the problems that they are being associated with to discourage them from pursuing their dreams and goals. Whatever you are facing and wherever you are, the world is enough for you to actually, you know, explore and to make some great impact. So you just need to ensure that you build your skills, whatever it is that is your area of interest. academically, professionally, and even generally in life, you should try to see how you can actually, upskill, improve, and make yourself a better person. And I can assure you, that ability to do a lot of great things, that ability to actually, build your skills will take you to rooms that
You never
you
even
never
expect.
imagine actually.
Yes.
So basically, I encourage us, despite all the challenges, to strive and to see what we can do in a world that is moving faster than ever. The world is today at a race, and if you refuse to join the race, you will just be you will just be left behind. So
Yes.
basically, you have to tighten your belt and see how you can actually live up to the expectations of a world that is moving faster than ever.
Okay. Thank you so much, Adamu, for sitting with us today.
Thank you so much, Not.
This conversation has been anything but ordinary, and I believe everyone listening will feel that. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to debut my podcast.
Your first podcast, actually.
Exactly. So
Yes.
thank you so much for the
much.
opportunity. I appreciate.